The sound of the bolt-tightening gun cracked sharply like little drum beats, echoing throughout the garage in the early morning. Beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, Ethan Cole bent under the old pickup truck, his hands covered in grease, sweat beading on his temples. His faded t-shirt was stained with long-standing oil marks, but his eyes still shone, a kind of shine that comes from someone who works with integrity. Ethan was only 24, but had already spent 3 years in this garage. Long days, overnight shifts, countless times being unfairly scolded by customers, he had experienced it all. But what kept Ethan going wasn't the paycheck. It was the sense of doing the right thing. In the far corner of the garage, an old silver sedan sat silently, its hood wide open. An elderly man stood beside it, hands trembling as he held a worn-out leather wallet. His brown jacket was neat, but the sleeve was slightly torn and the leather shoes on his feet were wrinkled and faded. "I just need the belt replaced," the man said quietly, his tone slightly firm. "I can pay half now. I'll send the rest next week." Behind the reception counter, Mason Briggs folded his arms and squinted as if the old man had just asked for something offensive. "No installment payments here, old man," Mason said, his voice dry as sandpaper. "This isn't a charity. If you've got money, we fix it. If not, take the car somewhere else." Ethan, who was wiping his hands with a rag, froze. His jaw tightened. A twitch flickered across his face. He had heard this kind of treatment too many times, but this time something in him wouldn't let him stay silent. He stepped out of the workstation, slowly but firmly. "I'll do it," Ethan said, his voice low and clear. "It only takes 15 minutes. The old man turned around, surprised. "Young man, I don't want to get you in trouble." "It's all right," Ethan shook his head with a faint smile. "I'm used to it." Mason squinted. "Ethan, don't be stupid. If you work for free, it's coming out of your paycheck." "Fine," Ethan said without hesitation. "Take it out of my pay." The manager snorted and turned away. To him, Ethan was just another stubborn guy not worth his time. But in the customer lounge, a tall man with salt and pepper beard, wearing a new mechanic uniform, sat calmly with a cup of coffee. No one knew who he was. Just Victor, the new apprentice, quiet and observant. But behind that calm gaze was the mind of Victor Hale, owner of the entire Hale AutoCare garage network, who had gone undercover to find the truth. Victor's eyes never left Ethan, his legs crossed, fingers tapping gently on the edge of the waiting seat. The next morning, the garage opened early as usual. The sound of engines rattling, the scent of oil and exhaust filled the air. It might feel unpleasant to newcomers, but to Ethan Cole, it was the familiar fragrance of labor and responsibility. He was checking the suspension system of an SUV when a timid voice came from the front of the garage. "Hello? My car makes noise when turning. Can you check it for me?" A woman in her early 30s stepped out of a 2016 Ford Escape. She wore a light jacket, clutching her keyring tightly. Her eyes showed worry, not because of the car, but because of the potential repair cost. Ethan walked over and offered a reassuring smile. "Let me take a look for you. It's probably nothing serious." But before he could crouch down, Mason Briggs's voice sounded from behind. "Inspection is $80, non-refundable. Garage policy." The woman, Carla Benson, as shown on her keychain, paused in surprise. $80 just to take a look? "Rules are rules," Mason shrugged. "If you don't like it, you can take your car elsewhere." Ethan glanced at Mason, his look taut like an old brake cable. But he said nothing. It wasn't time yet. Carla bit her lip, then nodded. "I don't have any other option. Please, go ahead and check." Mason nodded toward Ethan. "Do it." Under the car, Ethan gently turned the steering wheel to listen to the sound. After a few rotations, he exhaled lightly and looked up. "It's just low-power steering fluid. A bottle costs about $5. You can buy it and top it up yourself." Carla's eyes lit up. "That's all? I'm sure of it." She was about to say thank you when Mason cut in. "She needs a full power steering system replacement. $150. We don't just top off fluid." Ethan stood up abruptly. "She doesn't need a replacement. I just checked." Mason stepped closer. "That's not your decision. If she wants the fix, she pays the full price." or she walks. Carla hesitated between the two voices. I, I can't pay that much. Ethan stayed silent for a few seconds, then quietly said, go down the street, 3 blocks away, there's an auto parts store. Buy a bottle of power steering fluid. Open the cap, pour it in. Problem solved. Carla nodded gratefully. Thank you. Thank you so much. She hurried out of the garage. Mason watched her leave, eyes blazing with anger. Are you trying to ruin me? No, I'm trying to keep this garage from becoming a trap. In the corner of the waiting room, Victor Hale still sat, holding a soda can, his eyes tracking every detail like an unblinking lens. Over the past 48 hours, he had seen enough to understand. The real problem wasn't just the actions, but the way an entire system had been left to rot. Ethan's voice, Carla's eyes, and Mason's cold attitude replayed in his mind like raw footage waiting to be edited. This garage had morphed into a money-making machine, where honesty was treated like a troublemaker. In the afternoon, just when things seemed to quiet down, a man in a dark shirt walked in. He held a folded receipt in one hand, his face full of irritation. My name is Derek Shaw. I had my brakes done here last week. But my car still squeals. I took it somewhere else and they told me the rotors were never replaced. Mason stepped forward quickly, just like he always did when complaints came in. Impossible. Our garage always follows proper procedures. I have proof, Derek said coldly. They showed me the rotors. They're old. I paid $600. I want to know what's going on here. Victor quietly placed the soda can down and stood up from his seat. He slowly walked to the center of the garage, standing beside Ethan and Mason. No one noticed the shift until he removed his cap and looked Mason straight in the eye. And I want to know what's going on here too. Mason frowned. Who are you? Who are you? Victor spoke softly, but his tone no longer belonged to a trainee. I'm Victor Hale, owner of this garage chain. The room turned thick with silence. Ethan blinked. Other mechanics looked at each other. Mason froze, then let out a forced laugh. You're kidding, right? The new guy? Not a joke, Victor interrupted. I've been here for 2 days, observing, listening, and now I've seen enough. He turned to Derek. I'll personally inspect it. If what you say is true, we'll refund the entire amount. And more than that, we'll investigate why it happened. Derek nodded slowly. I hope your word means something. Victor turned to Mason. Do you have anything to say? Mason began sweating. Maybe some kind of mix-up. Maybe the tech. No, I saw everything, Victor said firmly. I saw this man. He pointed at Ethan, helping others without asking for anything. And I saw you pressuring customers, intimidating staff, and squeezing every dollar out of people's trust. Mason stepped back, lips trembling. I was just following the company procedure. Victor narrowed his eyes. I wrote the company procedure, and what you're doing is not in it. He paused and looked around the garage. And now I wonder if this is happening here. What's going on at the other 5 branches? Ethan stood still, like a soldier awaiting orders. Victor turned to him. Your name? Ethan Cole. 3 years here? Yes. Ever been promoted? Never. Victor remained silent for a moment, then spoke. Do you want to manage this garage? Ethan's eyes widened. I didn't think. You don't need to think. You've already proven yourself. I need people like you. People who do the right thing when no one is on their side. Mason shouted, You can't just fire me like this. Victor looked at him in the eyes, cold and steady. I can, and I just did. Mason fell silent. In his eyes was the collapse of an entire smug world that had just crumbled. As Victor left the garage that day, he saw Ethan bending down to wipe the floor where Carla's car had been. No one asked him, no one noticed. But Ethan did it because it was the right thing. And in Victor Hale's eyes, that was what truly made someone a real leader. The office door clicked shut behind Mason Briggs with a cold, simple finality. No protest, no excuses, only the silence of a fallen rain brought down by its own cruelty. Outside, Ethan Cole stood still. The early afternoon breeze drifted past the line of cars awaiting repair, sunlight casting strange blotches across the concrete floor. At that moment, no one in the garage said a word. It felt like time paused to redefine something more important than work. Trust. Have you ever managed it before? Victor Hale asked, his voice steady, his gaze carrying a peculiar kind of resolve. Ethan shook his head. I just know how to fix cars. Work with grease and wrenches. Management is something else. Not exactly, Victor replied. Managing isn't about shouting orders. It's about knowing when to speak and when to act. You did the right thing when no one stood with you. That's worth more than an MBA. Victor placed a small gold key on the desk, the metal glinting under the fluorescent light. This garage is yours now, for the time being. We'll talk more, but for now, I need someone I can trust here. Ethan looked at the key ring. Attached to it was a small tag engraved with the words, "Integrity is louder than orders." That afternoon, Ethan walked into the office he had only ever knocked on before. The space that had once been Mason's command center was now the heart of change. He turned on the computer, checked the scheduling system, reviewed financial reports and pending invoices. And then he saw it. A long list of charges billed to customers for services that had never actually been performed. Headlight replacement, no part record in inventory. The brake pad changed, no technician signature. Full oil change, only one can of oil logged out. Ethan exhaled hard. Each line was a punch to the gut. This garage had become a machine for squeezing money from customers' lack of knowledge. Worse still, workers like him, those who actually did the grum, had unknowingly helped sustain the system through silence. The next morning, Victor returned, no longer in oil-stained uniform, no cap. He walked in as though he had always belonged here without needing to prove anything. The garage felt different. The employees whispered to each other, eyes casting unfamiliar looks at Ethan. He was no longer just a stubborn, young mechanic. He was the one the owner had chosen. Victor stepped into the center of the garage and tapped lightly on the side of a pickup truck to get everyone's attention. His voice rang out, clear and firm. I know you all have a lot of questions. The answer is yes. I am Victor Hale, and I went undercover to see what was happening here. The garage fell silent. What I saw, he continued, was dedication being stifled by fear. Good people are forced to stay quiet, customers being taken advantage of. And worst of all, honesty becomes a crime. An older mechanic, Charlie, who had seen Ethan help the elderly man earlier, stepped forward. I've known for a while, he said in a gravelly voice, but I thought there was nothing I could do. Victor nodded. Now you can. Anyone who's ever been forced to do wrong can speak up today. I won't punish you. I need the truth so we can fix this place. A young receptionist named Liam, who had once tattled to Mason, stood up. His voice shook but was firm. I submitted fake reports. Not for money. I was scared of losing my job. Victor looked at him without blame. Owning your mistake is the first step toward doing what's right. In the days that followed, Ethan officially sat at the manager's desk. No leather chair, no expensive watch. He called each person in, listened without judgment, only asking one question. How can we do better? Service records were matched against inventory logs. Customers who had been overcharged were contacted to receive refunds, apologies, and explanations. A small handwritten sign was placed at the garage entrance. We're fixing mistakes, not just in your car, but inside this garage too. At first, customers were surprised, then moved. A middle-aged woman teared up when she was called back and refunded $120 for a tire replacement that never happened. A taxi driver hugged Ethan and said he had never seen a garage do that. By the weekend, as Victor prepared to leave and inspect the other branches, he stood at the garage entrance, watching Ethan jot down notes on the shift schedule. You're doing better than a lot of managers I've hired, he said. Ethan looked up and smiled lightly. I used to be on the floor. That's why I know the value of fairness. Victor extended his hand. I'll be back. Unexpectedly, like last time, Ethan shook it firmly. I hope I won't disappoint you. Victor walked out the door. Ethan turned back and saw Charlie wiping down the door handle. An old habit, but a steady one. Charlie, Ethan called out. What is it, manager? Just call me Ethan, and tomorrow help me train the new kids. I need someone who knows how to teach them to stay honest. Charlie chuckled. Didn't think I'd ever hear that from you. All right, I'll do it. As the sunset slowly settled over the garage roof, Ethan stood at the door with his hand on the shiftboard. The garage was still the same, but the air had changed. In one corner, someone had put up a new sign to replace the old logo, Hale AutoCare, where honesty is the standard, not the option. The coffee in Ethan's hand had gone cold without him noticing. He sat in his new office, not a luxurious place, just a creaky swivel chair and a chipped wooden desk. But everything suddenly felt heavy with something he had never grown used to: authority. Instead of starting the day with the familiar clatter of a torque wrench, Ethan began with emails, with shift schedules, with a series of calls to customers who deserved apologies, with complaints from former coworkers who were now his subordinates. He still wore his mechanic's uniform, even though everyone told him to switch to a button-up shirt. But Ethan knew he wasn't ready to become a boss. And maybe he didn't even want to. That afternoon, while reviewing the inventory records, the receptionist came in to inform him of an unhappy customer. Not about a service, but about receiving a refund. He said he doesn't want it, Liam said. Says it feels like an insult. Ethan stepped out and faced a middle-aged man, simply dressed. His expression was curt, but his eyes carried quiet honesty. I had my car fixed here, the man said. Maybe I was charged a bit extra, but the job was done. The car runs. I don't need pity. Ethan nodded slightly, understanding that feeling. The feeling of being seen as a victim. I'm not pitying anyone, Ethan replied. I'm just trying to fix what was wrong. And if someday you meet someone else who needs help, use that money. Pay it forward that way. The man said nothing. He just nodded, took the envelope, and left. Liam stood behind, eyes wide. Where'd you learn to say stuff like that? Ethan smiled faintly. From an old man who needed a belt replaced and no one would help. That evening, Ethan stayed late at the garage. No cars to fix, no customers, just time to sit and think. In a drawer Mason had left behind, he found a thick folder. It was a list of the other Hale AutoCare branches with revenue reports, customer feedback, and employee turnover rates. One branch in Pomona had unusually high revenue, but also the highest number of anonymous complaints. Ethan made a note, planning to call Victor the next morning. But Victor arrived early. He was sitting on the hood of an unrepaired car, notebook in hand, gazing distant. I was just about to call you, Ethan said. Victor nodded. I just came back from Pomona. There's something going on there. Maybe Mason wasn't the only one playing dirty. Ethan swallowed hard. If the whole system is rotting, what are you going to do? Victor looked at him, voice firmly. We don't pull weeds one by one. We change the soil, meaning start over. New policies, new managers. Every branch needs someone like you, someone who actually cares about customers and staff, not just the payroll. Ethan exhaled. I'm not sure there are many people like me. Then train them, Victor said with a small smile. Start here. Ethan held his first full staff meeting. Not to scold, but to rewrite the rules together. We won't pressure customers into unnecessary services. We will log working hours truthfully. No more trimming the records to look good. We will report any dishonest behavior, even if it comes from someone in charge. Some of the longtime mechanics exchanged doubtful glances. One asked, so what? Who actually listens to us? Ethan replied, I do. Victor does. And even if no one else does, I'll still do the right thing. In the crowd, Charlie, the old mechanic, clapped first. The sound was quiet, but enough to get others to follow. To turn words into action, Ethan installed a suggestion box at the entrance. He left forms, pens, and a note that read, your feedback is the best tool we have to fix what's broken. In the early days, there were only a few slips of paper, most of them complaints. But Ethan didn't hide them. He pinned them on the board and marked the issues being addressed. That openness gradually encouraged others to speak up. Liam, once a timid receptionist, grew more enthusiastic. Charlie began suggesting improvements to the inspection process. A young mechanic who had been held back under Mason now volunteered to train newcomers. Ethan began to understand he didn't have to carry the weight alone. Real change didn't come from one person, but from people willing to do what was right together. By the weekend, Victor returned. The garage was quiet but orderly. He walked around, nodding with approval. Feels different, he said. Ethan handed him a report. The customer return rate is 18%. Complaints are down by more than half in just 2 weeks. Victor read it and smiled. Just one person saying no to wrongdoing, and we get a whole garage saying yes to decency. Ethan stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, "What if I mess up?" Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. Everyone makes mistakes. But someone who knows they're wrong and chooses to make it right, that's a true leader. That afternoon, as Ethan was getting ready to leave, a young boy about 8 years old walked in with his father, a returning customer. "Dad says you're the one who helped fix this garage," the boy said. Ethan laughed. "Not really. I was just the first one who dared to clean up a mess everyone else pretended not to see." The boy's eyes widened. "I can clean up too." Ethan knelt down and handed him a clean rag. "Then start with that door handle. That's where decency begins." The gentle touch of early morning on the garage's tin roof sounded like the sigh of an old mechanic after a long night. Ethan Cole opened the gate earlier than usual. There was something in the air today that made him restless, not out of worry, but from a strange feeling between anticipation and calm, as if a chapter had just closed and a new door was slowly creaking open. He stepped into the office, coffee cup still steaming in hand, glancing at the planning board on the wall. It was now full of colors, handwritten notes from mechanics, messages from customers, and suggestion slips marked as resolved. Something had changed in this room. Not the walls, not the lights, but the way people walked in with different eyes, different attitudes. There was trust. A beep sounded. New email from headquarters. The subject line was simple: Hale AutoCare system, full chain reform plan. Ethan skimmed the contents. Victor had just announced a new policy, effective next month. Each garage would go through an internal ethics audit aimed at resetting standards across the entire system. The person assigned to train the managers of other branches was none other than Ethan Cole. When Victor stepped into the garage that day, he no longer needed to ask how Ethan was doing. Just walking through the door, he could feel it. The atmosphere, the attitude, the silent strength of earned trust. "Are you ready?" he asked without preamble. Ethan set the coffee down, exhaled slowly. "I don't know." Victor nodded. "Good. People who are too confident tend to ruin everything." They sat down together, and for the first time, they were not CEOs and employees. Just two people, speaking about the future not in figures but in the simplest terms. The desire to do what is right. In the following week, Ethan began a new journey, not on the repair floor, but on the road. From one garage to another, each place he visited greeted him with initial wariness, gradually replaced by true listening as he shared the story of Riverside. He didn't teach from manuals. He told stories. About an old man named Raymond who just needed a belt replaced. About a customer named Carla who only needed a bottle of power steering fluid. About sweat that wasn't sold for profit. At a branch in Pomona, after finishing his talk, a young female mechanic approached, eyes glistening. "I always thought good people would lose out, but now I understand. Some only lose because no one dared to go first." Ethan smiled. Then be the second. Back in Riverside, he noticed something strange. He was no longer the center. Charlie was showing two new mechanics how to inspect brakes. Liam was fixing a sign for customers. Everything ran smoothly. No one yelled. No one is being forced. A customer walked in holding something in his hand. A vintage watch. "Do you remember me?" Mr. Raymond smiled. Ethan froze. "I remember. I thought of you. That day you helped me without asking for a cent. Today I'm giving something back. Not with money, but with time." The watch was a wind-up model, the glass dulled with age, but the second hand was still ticking brightly. "You helped me keep going. Now I hope you'll always know when it's the right time to do what's right." Ethan took it, speechless. In that moment, everything slowed, not because of the ticking hand, but because of one simple sentence that touched the deepest part of him. That evening, as the mechanics finished it up and left, Ethan locked the garage. He didn't go home right away. He walked out to the empty lot, watching the last rays of sunlight hit the Hale AutoCare sign. He pulled out his keyring and added a new strap, one that held Mr. Raymond's watch to remind him every time he unlocked the garage that time moves on, but conscience stays. Victor approached from a distance, hands in his pockets, walking at ease. "Did you ever think there would be a day like this?" he asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, but I always hoped someone would stop and say, 'Enough.'" Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Light as the wind, you are that someone." As Victor walked away, he turned back one last time and smiled. "I'll be back." No warning. Ethan smiled. "I hope you will." And then the garage door closed, but the hearts inside it no longer did. Closing words, a young mechanic, a small act, the start of a system-wide change. Not born from punishment, but from awakening. Not because of a powerful CEO, but because of an undercover boss who was willing to listen. The story ends, but its echo remains. You may not run a garage, but surely you are standing somewhere between right and wrong. And if someone ever asks, "Is now the time to do what's right?" remember Ethan's watch. It always tells the truth.